From meatless meat to crustacean concrete, innovators are seeking their own solutions to climate change. Is green innovation the key to combating climate change? Hello, I'm Nathan King, in for Anna Naidu, and this is The Heat. Hello again. When you hear climate change, you may think of melting ice caps, sea level rises or heightened temperatures. But some are seeing climate change as an opportunity for innovation, from the solar panels that dot rooftops to electric cars taking to the road. CGTN's Daniel Wrenches has more on how an industry is cashing in on climate change.
Since the Roman era, the formula for cement hasn't changed very much at all. Modern-day Portland cement relies on superheating rock, a process responsible for between 5 and 8% of global CO2 emissions, which uses massive volumes of water. It's a slow-to-change industry.
I think most large companies have found that they are struggling with innovation. And so they're all trying to figure out a way to ignite that entrepreneurial spirit within the company.
Solidia says it can reduce the carbon footprint of cement and concrete by up to 70% and recycle 90% of all water used in the process.
Startup's a very exciting area. Innovation happens every day. It's something where decisions you make in the morning get implemented in the evening, and so you can see the benefits of your labor and your decisions very, very quickly.
The UN predicts 5 to 7 cities of the size of New York to be built every year until 2050, supporting a population of nearly 10 billion. San Francisco Airport is now using rock material which the startup Blue Planet captured from CO2 emitted from a nearby oil refinery.
It could be a threat for business if we don't deal with it, because the limitations of resources will become a brake on business growth. It can be an opportunity because there's all sorts of opportunities to innovate, to work within the constraints of the planet's resources and still serve the needs of the population.
This is the Impossible Burger. It's being crafted to look and taste like beef, despite being entirely plant-based. Livestock currently produce 14.5% of man-made greenhouse gas emissions.
As we bring people out of poverty and into the middle classes in China and in India, the growth in consumption completely overwhelms what we can do with just efficiency alone. We can't efficiency our way out of this, is a way of putting it. So we need business model innovation. Yeah, we need to look for different ways of making money and of growing business and of growing economies.
Tesla has created a new kind of business model by making battery-powered vehicles into an attractive consumer brand without promoting environmental credentials, and it's expanding into other sectors like solar panel roof tiles. As we literally build our futures and raise living standards for billions of people across the planet, the necessity of innovation will become even more critical if we're to ensure a sustainable path. Daniel Wrenches, CGTN, Washington.
And joining us now from Milan, Italy, is Stefano Boeri. He is an architect and the founder and creator of the Vertical Forest project, which is now in its latest development in Nanjing. Stefano, thanks so much for joining us. Now, you're doing this Vertical Forest in Nanjing. You've done them in Milan. What's been your inspiration for this?
Well, I have always tried to find a good combination between city and nature, between artificiality and biological sphere. And well, in 2007, I had the opportunity to design two towers in the center of Milano. And we started to think how to put together trees and tall buildings. And well, now we have opened it in 2014. Two towers in Milano, one is 120 meters tall, the other one is 100 meters, with 21,000 plants. Basically, there are 800 trees, 4,000 brush, and 15,000 other plants. And it's equivalent on a horizontal surface of 2 hectares of real forest. So I think it's a first experiment. It's like a prototype of a new generation of architecture. We are not simply hosting trees, but that are built in relation with trees. Trees are a basic component of architecture itself.
They're very beautiful and quite striking, but obviously they also do something else, and that is help compensate for the greenhouse gas emissions that we see all over China and all over the developing and developed world. How much aesthetically they're pleasing, but how much do they actually contribute to the fight against emissions?
Well, the first advice about the capacity of the vertical forest in Milano to contribute to reduce air pollution are quite positive. Basically, they say that in 1 year, the vertical forest is absorbing 30 tons of carbon dioxide and producing something like 19 tons of oxygen. And that's also quite important, they contribute, the leaves are absorbing the dust produced by the traffic. So these data are quite positive. At the same time, we know well that the presence of trees are creating a climate, a microclimate that helps to reduce the energy consumption in cooling in summertime the interior of the two towers. So also from that point of view, is quite relevant, the contribution they give in terms of sustainability.
Now, Nanjing's just the start, isn't it? You've been in China for a long time. You've got offices in Shanghai. And as China is increasingly urbanizing, as you know, huge plans, how much do you think this sort of vertical forest and the greening of these areas is going to expand?
Well, I think it's a crucial issue. Just think that in China, something like 30 million of people are abandoning the countryside every year. That means that in China, we cannot avoid to build new urban environments. But instead of adding new peripheral environment to existing metropolis and doing this kind of nightmare like the megalopolis around Beijing, which is now with something like 103 million of people. So what we are now proposing in China is to imagine, to realize a system of small cities, of green cities surrounded by agricultural fields and green environments, and all with buildings that have trees and plants on the vertical facades. So the point is, how can we really demineralize the urban surfaces? How can we imagine to increase and implement the biodiversity of our cities, and how we can contribute to the fight of climate change? Just think that basically the 75% of the carbon or CO2 which is on the atmosphere is produced by the city, and that the forests and the woods are contributing to absorb the 45% of that kind of production. So to imagine to have more trees, more forest inside our city means in a way to fight the enemy in its field. And that's what we are trying to do also in China.
Obviously, buildings are not environmentally friendly. They use a lot of concrete. There are, though, ways forward on trying to limit the impact of concrete as well. So how holistically can you build buildings that are also more environmentally friendly, as well as adding the trees?
Yeah, sure. No, so the two buildings in Milano, they have a Golden LEED certification, so they use also other devices like geothermal plants or so more or less all the possibility, solar panels and so on. But for sure, I think what we are now doing in other countries, we are building a vertical forest in Lausanne, one in Paris, and in that case, we are also imagining to use a wood structure, so a building that are with a structure in wood, and this is another important step in order to make these buildings more sustainable, also in a long time, so they will last more, and that the cycle of production of the material will be complete. So that's another possible advantages of such kind of buildings.
One of the things that came out of the Paris Climate Agreement was trying to get businesses like yourselves, but also bigger and smaller, on board in terms of climate change. Obviously, we've been looking at the Chinese government's plans for the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. But how do small companies and bigger companies make a difference? And where do you see the solution? Do you see it coming from the market?
Well, I think that the market is very important. I think that, well, if we think to European, North American city, it's sure that the point is not to build new cities, but more to imagine that this kind of new generation of building could act like a system of graphs that can produce locally an advantage in terms of climate condition. But for sure, the public policies have a crucial role in all this. So we cannot imagine a future without a strong direction by the public policies. So for sure, that what is happening in China, I think is quite relevant because the government is really investing so much in the creation of forests, in creation of forest cities, in all what is about greeneries inside our urban environment. But for sure, also in Europe and North America, there are many cities that are now trying to follow this kind of direction.
Wow. From Milan to Nanjing, Stefano Boeri, thanks so much for joining us. Coming up, climate change provides a unique innovation opportunity, but it's not without its challenges. Our panel discusses that next on The Heat. Stay with us.